Zine, we have got them LSU Tigers. So much turnover there with the coaching staff, with the personnel. Only 2 seasons removed from a national championship. I have not a clue what to make of this LSU team under Brian Kelly. So, how difficult was it to peg them in Athlon this year?
Fair to say they're maybe the biggest wild card.
Yeah.
Teams like Auburn maybe have transferred its wild card designation to LSU this season. Just 6 returning starters. It's the fewest of any team in the SEC West. I like the Brian Kelly hire. He's won everywhere. Grand Valley State, Central Michigan, Cincinnati, Notre Dame. I think he'll do the same thing at LSU. I also think one other positive for this is that, it feels like LSU's always been so volatile the last couple of years. It feels like they're going to have a level of stability with Brian Kelly there. And certainly he'll have to adapt to the SEC. I'm not worried about the fit. I think there's just so many unknowns with this roster. I mean, the offensive line is a question mark once again. Who starts at quarterback? Defensively, the transfers in the secondary I think are good. The question is, how does all that mesh together with transfers and new coaching staff? So, I mean, we have them outside the top 25, but to me, this is a team that is going to get better every week during the regular season, especially if they can settle the quarterback position and get through some of that staff transition. Should find out early how good they are, because I think Florida State in that first game of the year can challenge them.
Yeah, so, unfortunately, I feel the same way. I think they'll be better at the end of the season, but right out the gate, they got that challenge. It is in New Orleans, so should be home field advantage there against Florida State. But what can you tell LSU fans about the challenge they'll have facing FSU?
I think it's a team that's improving under Mike Norvell. Obviously, the biggest storyline at Florida State was the Travis Hunter. He didn't go to Florida State; he went to Jackson State, and there was the fire Mike Norvell space that went on for forever.
I think it's still going.
I think it's still going. Yeah, it might go on this year. Florida State loses that game, but I think you saw last year that they were basically one bad play away against Jacksonville State from going to a bowl game, which was a step forward from the previous year. It is not the Florida State that you're thinking of like in under the 90s and then under Jimbo Fisher. They are in rebuild mode. Their offensive line has not been very good, inconsistent quarterback play. If you're looking ahead to this year, Jermaine Johnson, who was drafted early in the NFL draft, is gone. They have some question marks at the defensive end spot with some turnover there. Jordan Travis, their quarterback, though, dynamic, kind of dual threat, guy that can run around and make plays, has progressed as a passer. So I think that will be a good challenge for that LSU defensive front, which I really like, and their secondary, because Florida State's tried to improve their receiving core to the transfer portal. So it's an improving Florida State team, but maybe not the Florida State team that we're used to seeing from, 8-9 years ago.
Right. So almost safe to say there's probably going to be a lot more pressure on Mike Norvell than there will be Brian Kelly.
Yeah, I think certainly it's the SEC and it's LSU, so I'm always hesitant to say, well, there's no expectation of winning there. But I think when you look at what LSU inherits, just the turnover at offensive line, the quarterback position, the fact they were 6-7 last year, I think Brian Kelly should get a little bit of a grace period here. And LSU still has good players in the program. I mean, you look at Mason Smith and you look at some of the guys that they have still on defense. The gap between LSU, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, it's not very much. It feels like one of these teams is going to come out of this group and ended up kind of exceeding our preseason expectations. And when you have a roster like LSU plus the coaching staff, this to me is a team that is going to be very hard for us to figure out this preseason, but might surprise us during the year.
Now, moving aside from Alabama, because that's an obvious answer, what do you think is the toughest test on LSU's SEC schedule here? Is it the season finale at A&M? I mean, that's going to be difficult. Traveling to Arkansas, at Auburn, at Florida. What do you think will be that toughest test?
I'll give you kind of a weird answer. I think it's at Arkansas, because if I'm LSU, and I know coaches don't think this way, but A&M is going to be favored anyways. Alabama is going to be favored in that game. Arkansas is one of those swing games. They lost, LSU lost close last year.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're thinking about how does LSU get to 5-3 or higher in the SEC, like, you're going to need to win at Arkansas, because you get Ole Miss and Mississippi State at home. So for me, if I'm LSU and I'm sitting there trying to plot how do we finish higher in the West, to me it goes through winning at Arkansas, because then you sort of get that tiebreaker, and all these teams being clustered together is going to be important.
Yeah, and interestingly, Arkansas had some guys transfer to LSU. LSU had a guy transfer to Arkansas. So, man, all kinds of
Yeah,
mix in the blood there. You know what?
Yeah, I mean, I think the transfer portal has added a layer of offseason intrigue. I mean, I think it's made things more interesting, and it adds an opportunity for teams like LSU and Arkansas to get better right away when you have personnel issues. You can just go into the portal and get somebody to help you right away. So there's some kind of good and bad with the portal, I know, but I mean I think for me as a college football fan, it's just made it more interesting.
And last thing about LSU, what's your thoughts on their special teams? Because I know they added a transfer, but it seems like that's been a real issue for LSU in the past. And if they are, there's a glut of these teams. You need standout special teams if you're gonna. That could be the difference.
Yeah, and they hired Brian Polian, who was at Notre Dame, is a good special teams coach, so that should help a lot. Obviously, Cade York leaving is huge, so I think you are right when you talk about the margins for some of these teams. It's winning on special teams, winning close games, winning the turnover battle. Also, quarterback play too is just so crucial because we look at LSU and you've got a couple options there. We feel good about Arkansas under KJ Jefferson, Will Rogers at Mississippi State. So, yeah, I think everything in these teams is going to matter a lot when the gap is very small.
All right, next